Yep. That's interesting. I know it's there, but I can't see it. I can see it there,
Oh,
right? That's
okay.
almost happening in real time,
Oh, cool.
but I can't see it on my screen. Let me try. Let me try a refresh. Yeah. Yeah, same thing, only smaller. So it's a freaky thing, you know, between Facebook and Skype. They're so unpredictable, and we're like so lucky to have them. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, they're still like amazingly unpredictable. Ah,
There you go.
there. How about that?
Hmm.
Good, good. All right, it's 8 o'clock. Let's roll. Yeah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's 8 o'clock on Thursday night, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for the 26th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour. My name is Greg Rapport. I am the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides one-to-one mentors to youth who are in need. This program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of Doc G and the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Doc G's at the big board tonight, along with Robin. We're glad to have both of them along. I notice Michael is already tuned into the show. Hi, Michael. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate that. Continuing a couple of conversations from last week and talk about a lot of different things tonight. Certainly, a little talk about smartphones, a little talk about the opioid epidemic. Some interesting reports I'd like to make you aware of having to do with at-risk youth and the health system, and a lot of the young people that I meet have like serious marijuana problems, and that's a little weird because you don't think of marijuana like you do heroin. I have an incredible guest tonight. Sitting next to me is the fabulously inspirational Kristen Gray Apple. And Kristen is an acupuncturist, and I think you'll be both entertained and amazed at her sense of the way the body functions and the nature of her purpose, especially as it relates to childhood trauma and the stress faced by the vulnerable youth whom we serve. And you will get to meet her in just a few moments. I want you to know that listeners are welcome to call in tonight, 609-807-2492. Or right into the comments field on my Facebook page. I noticed Tony's joined us. Gene has joined us. Thank you very much for listening in. And the number, if you'd like to call in, 609-807-2492. A quick reminder of our upcoming shows. On March 8th, we begin the first of 3 pre-recorded shows with a show that you are guaranteed to love, because my guest is none other than Zoe Brooks, co-founder of the Trenton Circus Squad. On March 15th, you will see an eye-opening interview that I enjoyed tremendously with a gentleman named Mark Wilcox from Covenant House. And on March 22nd, a 1-hour-long expose of the opioid epidemic. So with all that in mind, please tell your friends to tune into this program right now. Do it right now so we can spread the word. We're so fortunate to have this kind of technology platform to launch from because this Facebook technology makes it easy to share this information. In order for this to have a large-scale galvanizing effect on the child welfare industry, we need you to realize the value of the movement that advocates child welfare. And internet radio is the linchpin. This is the hub. This is the center of the hub. Soon we'll be able to hear listeners describe best practices, not just opinions, but best practices from all around the world in real time. And I have to tell you, the prospect of doing that is so exciting to me. Because you know what it does for an organization like Age Out Angels? It really helps us with 2 key areas. Going national like this enables us to develop relationships and partnerships with organizations that are similar to ours all across the country. So if a youth in need identifies to us but lives far away, and I can tell you this happens all the time, I get calls from all over the country from youth in crisis, we can access a partner who is in their area and get them immediate help. And the second thing that this does, it identifies geographic gaps where someone might call us and there is no partnering program and we need to develop mentoring services for youth in those particular places. So you see how it works? We just need your help to spread the word. This is wholly dependent on people like you caring enough to want to spread the word via social media. Now, if you think about all the reasons people use social media, you know, to show pictures of their baked goods or to espouse their political opinions, or my particular favorite is to stay connected with old friends from 8th grade. Well, if we work together, we can use social media to improve the lives of children, and it requires very little effort on your part. So please, consider yourselves all deputies in the Child Welfare Army. Remember, over 400,000 youth in the foster care system, 20,000 age out every year, plus another 3 million youth who are homeless and even more who live in poverty. It's a big, big, big job, and we can't do it alone. We can't do it without your help to spread the word, so do it right now. Hit that share button on Facebook and tell your friends to share with their friends, and tell them to tell their friends to share with their friends, and on down the line. And if you do that, we'll develop mentors on a national scale. So please do it right now. Share this with your friends. Let's get the ball rolling. And while you're doing that, I'd like to remind everyone that our theme music comes to us courtesy of Kurt Seldom-Ridge, operator of the Cave Rehearsal Recording Space in Pennsylvania. If you have recording or rehearsal needs, you can get in touch with Kurt by emailing to thecave1876@gmail.com. Once again, you are welcome to call in tonight. The number is 609-807-2492. 609-807-2492. You can also write your questions in the comments field of my Facebook page. Little quick news from the front. From Baton Rouge, Louisiana, it comes a story about 4,000 kids currently in foster care in the state of Louisiana. Some of those kids will go on to find forever homes, whether that be adoption or reunification with their biological family. Other kids bounce around from home to home before aging out of the system at 18 years old. 18 years old, that's the key. In that whole paragraph, the key there is that they age out at 18 years old. In New Jersey, they can stay in until 21. So I would like to request that Louisiana come into 2018 and recognize that 18 years old is too young to age out of the foster care system. But this is the story about two women who had similar experiences but different outcomes. A Baton Rouge resident by the name of April Hill and a Louisiana caseworker who actually grew up in the foster system in Washington State named Leanna McCrae. Hill is a young adult now, but recounts the day she entered the foster care system while she was a toddler. Hill said it all started when she was injured by the hands of her biological mother. I hope you're all sitting down out there because it's about to get ugly in here. This is a quote from Hill. She said, I was told, she was a toddler now, so I was told that my mother picked me up as far as her arms would reach in the air and then dropped me on my face. And then she picked me up again and she dropped me on my face again. And she repeated that over and over until eventually I was forced to sit in a chair and she tried to kill me in the chair. I'm just going to pause and let that sink in for a second. That's how this woman's life started as a toddler. So you would look at that situation and you would say, well, yeah, she has to be removed from that home, right? I mean, that's painfully obvious. She said she was taken away from one unsafe home and put into another. The next unsafe home was her first foster care placement. She says that every foster care child has a caseworker designed to look out for the child. Hill said she could count on one hand and not use all of her fingers how many times her social worker actually came to that placement. A lot of things that aren't supposed to happen in custody happened, Hill said. Same thing happened to McCrae. Now, McCrae didn't go into the system until later. McCrae says that one of the reasons my foster parents got away with what they were doing to us for so long is because I maybe saw my social worker once every 6 months. Maybe. McCrae entered the system as a teen. In 5 years, she experienced 10 different placements. Hill entered the system as a toddler, and she lived in at least 15 different homes before aging out of the system on her 18th birthday. And it's funny when she says at least 15 different homes, because when you enter when you're a toddler, you lose count after a while. You have no idea. Toddler to 18, she was in the system. Maybe it was 15, maybe it was 14, maybe it was 25. She has no idea. While Hill said she has some bad memories of her time in foster care, there were good moments too. Both Hill and McCrae recount stories of, you know, that one particular Christmas or something when everyone sat around the table and they actually felt like they were part of a family. McCrae talks about a time when she had just moved, and it was her birthday. It was actually her first birthday since entering foster care. And her foster family wanted to have a party for her, but the problem was she had just moved and she had no idea who to invite. It was a whole new group of people, and so what they did was her caseworker brought her family over, and they made a little party for her. So it's not all horrible, but typically when a teen turns 18, they age out of the foster care system. At the time McCrae aged out of Washington State, they actually gave her the ability to opt back in. So she did that. She was smart and took advantage of that. A lot don't. And then she had another piece of good luck where the last foster family she was with became a permanent connection for her. So when she went away to college, even though she was over 18, she could return there on breaks. And we talk about that a lot on this show, about how foster youth go away to college, and then suddenly summer semester or winter break comes up, and they're homeless. So McCrae went on to get a degree in social work, started teaching parenting classes, and became a worker for the state. Now, Hill had a very different outcome. When Hill aged out of the system at 18, things were not easy. At first, she went to college. At the time, she was getting money from the state. But cuts to the foster care system meant no more stipend. Without funds, she left school and moved back to Baton Rouge. She quotes, "I was homeless a couple of times because I didn't have anyone to fall back on." Hill is back on her feet, working hard for the life she has. However, she said it is scary knowing there's nobody she can fall back on if she hits a rough patch. "Everything I have gotten on my own." If we get a chance to talk about this more later, I want to tell you about some things that the Louisiana Department of Child and Family Services is highlighting as some particular initiatives that they are hoping will improve the system. But I can tell you right now that the one thing that's not on that list is increase the age. You know, let youth stay in the system until they're 21. And actually, Age Out Angels serves youth actually forever, but you can start with us from anywhere between the ages of 14 and 24. And if you listen to the Ann E. Casey Foundation, and if you are a regular listener of this show, you know the Casey Foundation is the mothership of organizations like ours. They actually believe that the age of adolescence should be expanded to 29. And I don't know if that makes a statement about the growth and maturity of young people. I think it makes a larger statement about just how tough it is to make a go of it independently in the world today. So what I want to do, Doc G, if you have the music queued up, I want to take a break for just a second and give our listeners a chance to hit that share button on Facebook. Do it right now, because if you don't, all of your friends will miss the time we're about to spend with Kristen Gray Apple. So we'll be back in just a minute. Hit that share button. And we're back. You know, when most Americans seek medical treatment, we follow the path given to us by managed care companies, right? We're all slaves to our insurance company. Sometimes you cannot have a bunion removed without making 10 phone calls and fighting with a crazy phone system to try to get through and find out who's the in-network service provider who can remove that bunion. Well, you know, the thing is, there certainly is evidence that substantiates the value of our traditional medical community. People do get well. They get cured. Broken bones get healed. But my guest tonight, Kristen Gray Apple, takes that traditional concept and goes one step forward in thinking. because Kristen is an acupuncturist. And I have to tell you all that the part that I love about this and that I think you will be able to relate to best is how she got into her profession. So, Kristen, welcome to the Age Out Angels Radio Hour.
Thanks very much for having me.
It's great to have you here. I so enjoyed our conversation the other day because it was your personal journey that is so easy to relate to. So when you began your post-high school education, what were you studying at the time?
So from high school all the way into my mid-20s, I was a dedicated artist. My undergrad, I was an art major, and then I went to graduate school for an MFA in studio art as well, fine arts.
Okay, visual arts.
Yes.
All right. And before we go further, I just want to say hi to Frank, who's tuned in, Tony, who is tuned in tonight. Hi, it's great to hear from all of you. I hope more people will write in. And if you have questions for Kristen, feel free to write or call in 609-807-2492. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see that number at the bottom of the screen. So you were along in school and moving towards a totally different career. And then all of a sudden, you discovered acupuncture on a late night infomercial on television, right?
Sort of like that. So yeah, I was teaching art, and my career was oriented toward being an art professor, and then I had a health issue that had been going on for many years, much of my life actually.
Chronic.
And a chronic issue, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was kind of at my wit's end trying to find a resolution. I had seen lots of different practitioners. I had tried different, all kinds of approaches. I had been misprescribed medications, and finally I decided, well, I've been hearing about acupuncture. Maybe I'll give it a try. I was somewhat skeptical. I was interested, but I was skeptical, and I tried it, and it just resolved my issue very quickly.
Like quickly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helped me on so many other levels as well. So beyond that particular complaint, it helped me in my life, and I just decided, wow, this is something I need to look into a little bit more. So over the next 3 years, while continuing to pursue my art career, I started volunteering and doing acupuncture-related work, and slowly I came to a very clear realization that I needed to pursue this for my life
For
profession.
career, yeah.
Yeah.
So you had this chronic condition, and the doctors had, I guess, experimented with
Yes.
different.
Yeah. So I
You know,
mean,
we've all been there. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes symptoms can look like one diagnosis when really they're not that diagnosis. So I had been diagnosed several times with the wrong issue.
Sure.
And so I was given antibiotics and things like that were really doing nothing and actually causing other issues within my body that, so they weren't resolving the issue, and they were also kind of causing more issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, I mean, one thing that we talk a lot about here on the radio hour is stress, because, the population that we work with when we consider children vulnerable,
Right.
that's, usually the result of complex trauma, of like, stresses that most of the people who are listening to this show can't even imagine.
Right.
The gunshots in your neighborhood kind of stress,
And the first story you told as we started in.
That's right. Yeah. Dropping
Yeah,
the child.
that
Exactly.
kind of thing.
So it just makes me curious. Do you find that there is necessarily sometimes a stress connection between?
I almost always find that there's
Really?
a stress connection with almost every patient I see, even if they're coming in for something as relatively straightforward as elbow pain. Almost every patient, whatever their history is experiencing some level of stress, and stress is a huge factor.
And so does acupuncture actually treat the stress
Yes.
as well?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So acupuncture does regulate the autonomic nervous system, and a lot of times when we're in a state of stress, we're in a state of sympathetic dominance. Our sympathetic nervous system is overstimulated, and a lot of us experience that in our present day society. And so acupuncture just works to regulate and smooth that balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems.
Yeah, we train on that in Age Out Angels.
Right.
It's the autonomic nervous system, the fight, flight,
Exactly.
or freeze mechanism that a lot of these children
that amygdala activation. Yeah, exactly.
Experience. Yeah. Um, we used to just call it fight or flight, and they sort of added the freeze to that.
I just think that's important.
Much
yeah.
more recently, because that's what you see in children. Just
Almost like playing dead.
deer in
yeah.
the headlights, paralyzed, and to an outside observer, it looks like they're coping, but they're really not.
Right.
Inside they're just a churning mass.
Yeah. And one day that does have a manifestation that beyond just frozenness. That one day that's like an implosion that one day unravels.
Yeah, that's really quite amazing. Now, acupuncture. We're talking about it like it's brand new, right? This is the newest thing, but that's not true. It's actually been around for quite a while. Yes.
Yes. So acupuncture, though, it is evolving now as our society and our mankind continues to evolve. It actually predates recorded history. So acupuncture, many people think of it as originating in China, and it's the philosophy really has its origins in the Taoist tradition, which is about 8,000 years old.
Yeah.
But the first recorded texts and were compiled around 300 to 200 BCE, and there have been archaeologists have found bones and stones that were they used those as needles back in the day.
Oh my!
They found some from about 400 BCE, and the metal needles were around 400 BCE. So
we'll talk later about how your needles are much more gentle.
Yes, a little different. Yes.
But what did you tell me that about the Iceman? Right. We're talking about for those of you who are just sort of listening. You know who the Iceman is, right? His remains were found, and he is about 5,000 years old. But the remains were found in Switzerland. Is that?
In the Alps, between Austria and Italy.
Okay.
So yeah, this mummified 5,000-year-old man was found, and he has tattoos and markings on his bones in some of the same places that are along the acupuncture meridians on acupuncture points. So there's evidence that this man was using acupuncture in another part of the world, so it may not have just been China where acupuncture was practiced.
Yeah. So somewhere between 8,000 years old. This is not a new fad, ladies and gentlemen. This has been around. This has staying power.
Yes.
You might say that it has staying power. I wonder how the managed care organization, takes that staying power into consideration. So all right. So now we're talking about lots and lots of needles, and that scares the hell out of people, whether they can see it or just hear it.
Yes.
So describe what these needles are like.
So firstly, I would like to say it's very normal. It's a very normal thing for people to fear needles. And what most people experience when they come in is they're very nervous their first time. And with that first needle, they go, they might be perspiring with nervousness. And as soon as they're needled, they say, oh, that's it. So it's really, the needles are actually very fine. They're as thin as a cat's whisker. They're flexible, and they're filiform needles. So they're not hypodermic or hollow. And oftentimes that makes them, you almost don't even feel them when they enter the body.
So very, very thin, very flexible, not the old metal bone.
Metal bone or stone needle.
Right, stone needles. Goodness, and nothing like a hypodermic, yeah. So you have all these needles, right?
Oh, just to be clear, they are metal. They are stainless steel, and they're single use and disposable. So they're only used once and then disposed into medical waste.
So how many needles do you use on a patient in an average treatment?
Different acupuncturists have different practices and philosophies. Generally, I use between 10 to 30 needles per individual. Children, I would use. Sometimes I don't even use needles on children, but if I do, it's maybe 2 or 3. Okay,
and so now the needles, I presume, have a very specific pattern placement.
Right. So we in acupuncture, we in Chinese medicine, we talk about something called meridians. They're like pathways or channels throughout the body, and we have 14 major meridians. And basically, they travel from head to toe, sort of similar to the circulatory or nervous system. And along these meridians, we have acupuncture points. And the meridians, I like to they basically carry what we call chi, or vitality, throughout the body. And I like to compare them to rivers, because when you think of a river, if it gets dammed or if it gets dried out, that causes some kind of problem. So within the body, if the meridians are regulated and everything's harmonious, the body feels healthy. If there's a blockage, or if there's some kind of one meridian's taking more of the chi than the others, then you'll have some disharmony, and then disease or discomfort will manifest.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful metaphor when you think about a river. It makes perfect sense. If it overflows, there are problems. If it underflows, there are problems, and it affects the whole ecosystem, that's all around it. So I think that really makes it understandable to people, especially if you're just listening in on the radio. So these meridians, or passages, so to speak, they go head to toe.
Right.
And left to right.
Left
and
to
up
right.
And down.
So if we're talking about the liver meridian, for example, we will have the same trajectory on the left side and the right side.
Okay. So this, I'm assuming, required a whole lot of study.
Yes.
This is not something you learned from Joe in the back room on a Tuesday.
It was more than we could even expect when we all looked at each other. What did we get ourselves into?
Yeah, well, you got to take it seriously, and clearly you do. And so tell me about how much study it did require, and if there are like board certifications and things like that that go with it.
Yes. So it is a 3-year master's degree. In my case, I had to take some science before going in. I had some science requirements to take before even going into the program. A lot of people are coming from science backgrounds, and so the transition's a little smoother for them. And then after, we also do a clinical internship, and we do board exams. Now for New Jersey, there is a Western Biomedical Board exam required as well. So in my case, there were 3 board exams in order to get licensed.
3 board exams, and so then that becomes a certification that that is your license.
That's the licensure.
Your license to practice. Is it the same everywhere, or is that New Jersey?
That's New Jersey, and New Jersey also requires a safety and jurisprudence exam. So there are technically 4 exams for New Jersey, but every state is different. Generally, there are at least two board exams for a person to become licensed as an acupuncturist.
So, I noticed, by the way, that Arthur has tuned into this show. Arthur, thanks a lot, man. It's great to have you aboard. So you do have to be able to have clinical level conversations with doctors.
Yes, definitely. And it's really, I would say, I can't speak for all acupuncturists, but I'd say the majority of my peers are, really interested in both Eastern and Western medicine, and they are very happy to be part of a Western medical community as well. And so to be conversant with, other doctors, and both physical therapists, and MDs, depending on what the concentration or specialty is really important in order to maximize the benefits for our patients.
So I come to you for my first treatment. Yes. Or I don't even know that it's a treatment, right? I'm probably coming to you for a consultation first, right? I
do offer free 15-minute consultations typically for people. But then I tell people their first treatment, their first time actually visiting, is going to involve an interview and a lot of, talking about what's going on, and then we do a full treatment as well.
You do a treatment?
Yes.
On the first one. All right, so I guess we're talking, you start with a thorough intake then, right?
And I do have a pretty lengthy intake form.
I can't help but thinking about my father right at this moment. God rest his soul, he's long gone, but when he was like, 85, 87 years old, and we'd take him to the doctor, and we knew that there were like 10 things that he had to discuss with the doctor, and the doctor would say, "How are you?" And he'd go, "I'm fine." And we would say to him, "Why don't you tell the doctor what's wrong with you?" He goes, "If he's a good doctor, he'll figure it out."
Right. Well, that's very true of any doctor, and we like to think of ourselves as investigators. So people are aware of what's going on, and we all are somewhat aware and somewhat not aware of what's happening within us. And so we ask questions, we observe the posture, we observe, marks on the body, we observe the eyes, all kinds of things. And we also try to gather information by asking questions. And we have to really consider the right questions to be asking patients.
And what did you tell me about, I'm looking at my notes here from our talk last week about the tongue. You said the tongue is
Yes.
very important.
Yeah, so there are certain diagnostic things that we do. Physical exam involving taking the pulse and looking at the tongue, and then checking the abdomen for reflexes as well. And when we're looking at the tongue, it's kind of, I would like to, think of it kind of similar to reflexology, where, on the foot, people are kind of familiar with the word reflexology. The foot has different sections that relate to different organs. It's the same as the tongue. The tongue has different areas that relate to different organs in the body and give us information about what's happening within the body. So we're looking at the shape of the tongue, the color of the tongue, any differences from left to right. We're looking at we call it moss, or the coating on the tongue, any cracks in the tongue and where the cracks are, how long the tongue is, whether it's moving,
Wow.
all kinds of things, whether it's kind of shaking.
I just want you guys to know out there, we have 2 Michaels listening in right now. We just got our second Michael. I think one Michael is in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. And the other Michael is in New Jersey. You remember the Michael who was on our guest on our show many, many times, who went through the orphanage system in New Jersey, the last orphanage in Pennington. He was a graduate of. So we're very grateful to have multiple Michaels.
Hi, Michael.
Listening in tonight. Remember, if you have questions, you can feel free to call. Don't be bashful. 609-807-2492 is the number. My guest is Kristen Gray Apple, acupuncturist extraordinaire, and we have multiple Michaels listening in tonight. So we got that going for us as well. So, all right, so my shoulder's killing me lately. I woke up one morning and it just wasn't working right.
Yes.
Can you fix that?
I feel confident that I can address a musculoskeletal pain, yes.
Okay. And so how many treatments will that take?
It's a great question.
I'm just curious, though, because it sort of sounds like, and I hope this isn't rude, but it sounds like there's a relationship somehow between this and chiropractic. It's both areas that are sort of outside of traditional medicine, that traditional practitioners, some accept, others don't. People have different feelings about. Both sort of seem to be designed to create a kind of stasis.
Like a homeostasis in the body. Yeah. I think that's a very reasonable observation. Or, chiropractic was sort of on the fringes for a long time, and now it's covered by many insurances. And with chiropractic, they're adjusting. I can't talk too much about chiropractic because I don't have that education, but they are adjusting the bones, and they're trying to, and the joints, to try to create free up movement of energy in the body, for lack of a better word. And in our case, we are, doing similar adjustments of the chi in the body. Exactly.
So that leads me to my question, which is, if the body gets right, does it stay that way?
No. Yes, I think that's a great question. So the way that one of the issues that I've had for a while with the word balance is that most people think of it as a static state, where we just kind of achieve this really tight state of not moving at all. But life is not that way. Life is constantly moving, and we're constantly having to readjust, redistribute. So what we're trying to achieve is more like when you hear acupuncture and Chinese medicine is very poetic medicine. So when you think of an orchestra, there are multiple instruments playing at once. They're not just not playing, they're not just frozen. When you have an orchestra, multiple instruments are playing at once, and they're creating something that's beautifully harmonious, or maybe deliberately disharmonious, but overall they're creating a beautiful piece of art. And the body is similar. So if you have an instrument that is just making some kind of crazy noise that no one can understand, then all the other instruments are going to have a hard time creating harmony with it.
Yeah.
Similar to the body. So our job is to help the body keep moving, but in a way that's harmonious with itself.
And there's other things too, like it's not just, my shoulder hurts. There are things like stopping smoking.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So usually when people come, it's so rare that I have someone say one thing. Most people have at least 5 things going on.
Really?
And the cool thing about acupuncture is you can treat them all at once. You can treat multiple things at the same time. And more often than not, the symptoms that they're presenting with are all related.
Sure.
So they might think like, oh, I have this cough, and then I also have been sort of depressed, and I've been having eczema, and like they seem all kind of separate.
Seem disparate, yeah.
Right. But they're actually all related to the same thing going on in the body.
Yeah, my knee
from
hurts
an
and my left eye is blurry.
They could be related.
And somehow they could
Yeah.
end up actually being related. So, is it a guarantee? Is it 100%?
It's not 100% guarantee. It's not a cure-all for all people.
Yeah.
I like to tell people, that when I probably in the last year I've had 2 cases that were not affected by, their main complaint we were not able to treat. That's very uncommon though, and even then they got something out of the treatments. They got stress reduction, maybe they had better quality sleep, etc. But for chronic cases, I like to tell people it takes, usually, depending on the case, you have something like scoliosis, which is harder to treat, or you have just something like chronic low back pain. That usually takes 6 to 10 treatments to get from things feeling like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit of change, but it's not sticking, to it actually sticking.
Yeah.
So after that point, people come for a tune-up every couple of months.
Oh, I see. So it's maintenance.
It's maintenance, exactly. And acupuncture can be used as a preventative medicine. If it's something acute, like it just happened, somebody got a bee sting and they have hives, we can treat that in 1 to 2 treatments generally.
I see. So, I've seen a lot of people with a lot of ailments over the
Yeah.
years, and it seems to me that by the time people come to you, because you're not the first step, right?
Usually
right?
not. Yeah.
So by the time they come to you, it's possible that one thing has grown into 2 or 3 or 4, and that time has passed. And the thing that's strange to me about the way folks view their ailments is that if you have the same ailment long enough over a period of time, you begin to take ownership of it. Like it's my shoulder. It's my shoulder problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or people say I have a bad back, as though it's like that's just it.
Yeah, it's ownership. It's mine. It actually becomes comfortable to be in pain, in that way.
Right.
And so you have to cut through that.
Part of their identity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to cut through that before you can.
It's challenging, and there could be years of baggage around this particular problem. I mean, just to use addiction, for example, I had a patient who is smoking 3 packs a day for 30 years. To change that is challenging, and acupuncture is kind of an umbrella term. There are different branches involved in the Chinese medical medicine, and acupuncture is one of them. We have herbal medicine as well, lifestyle counseling and nutritional counseling, as well as exercises like qigong that are promoting of health as well. So we will advise patients in all of those areas.
So tell me, are traditional doctors coming around to being more accepting?
Definitely.
Took them 8,000 years.
Yeah, they've been great. I mean, in this area, I've had a lot of great interactions with doctors, and they seem very welcoming and thankful. And I think it's getting easier for everyone to sort of say, I'm an expert in this area, and you're great at this, and we can work together. And I love this collaboration, because what we're seeing is we're actually getting way better results by collaborating together on things. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of doctors are trying to learn acupuncture. What I've heard from doctors is that they they want to take these 300-hour courses in acupuncture to learn protocols, almost like prescriptions. And that's not going over very well for most doctors, I'll say, that I've talked to. They end up not having very effective treatments because they're not really learning the theory or the art behind it. They're just learning these protocols. And you can't apply that even if you have the same symptom between 3 different individuals, the treatment's going to be different because they're individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm thinking, though, that, it's possible that when a doctor gets a patient like the patient that you were, the one who's chronic and they're just trying experiments on you like a lab rat and not getting any results. In fact, maybe even making some things worse. If they would just throw up their hands and say, look, try this acupuncture thing.
And there are certain things that I would not treat, that I would send my patients definitely to a Western doctor for. So I really think it's important to incorporate both. So if I'm treating Lyme's disease, for example, I'm not going to ever tell a patient that I'm going to treat that solely with acupuncture. They need to, if a child has Lyme's disease, they should go through a tradition, the course of antibiotics.
Makes total sense. Doc G, if you have the music queued up, I'd like to take a little break. I want to say hi to Ed, who is out there listening. Ed, it's good to have you aboard. Marty is out there listening. Hi, Marty. I'm going to take a little break. Hit the share button, please, on your Facebook page. And don't deny your friends the opportunity to hear Kristen Gray Apple talk more right after the break. Back in a minute. And we are back with Kristen Gray Apple. I need to remind everyone about the Princeton Elks Charitable Trust. The Princeton Elks Charitable Trust provides funds for worthy individuals, organizations, and veterans. And if you think you qualify for a grant from the Princeton Elks Charitable Trust, I want you to call the president of the trust right away. His name is Stuart Malikob at 609-933-7085 to find out if you qualify. And if I said that too quickly for you to write it down, feel free to hit me on Facebook. Or send me an email, and I'll be happy to give you that information. Also, thanks to the people who made donations to Age Out Angels this week. We are so very grateful for your donation. And remember, not just during the holidays, but every time you make a purchase from Amazon, you could be making a donation to Age Out Angels without spending one single penny more. You heard right. It doesn't cost you money to make a donation to Age Out Angels because when you go to Amazon, there's a little pop-up that offers you a chance to go to a section of their website called Amazon Smile. And if you make your purchase through Amazon Smile, you can designate Age Out Angels as your charitable donation organization. And without it costing you more, a portion of your purchase will go to help children who need it the most. I think it's like 0.5%. It's not a lot, but it's something. And if you want to friend me on Facebook, I can actually send you a link that will take you directly to our Age Out Angels designation and save you a few clicks. And I was told by Amazon, I think it was just the other day, that they are going to triple the donation that they're giving to us. So I think it's going from 0.5 to 1.5%. So I'm not telling you should go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff, but I know you do anyway. I know you're all going to Amazon out there. So please designate Age Out Angels as your charitable organization. Back with Kristen Gray Apple, acupuncturist. So let's talk a little bit about trauma. Do you know it when you see it? What does it look like?
Yeah, for adults and children, trauma generally looks like multiple things happening at once. So we'll see big changes in eating, sleeping patterns. Sometimes we'll see rage or emotional outbursts, difficulty focusing, sometimes, checking out or kind of withdrawal, strong startle responses, avoidance of eye contact or physical contact, and sometimes kind of like obsessive behaviors, lots of different things.
Children don't come to you alone, right? A parent.
No, yeah,
Right.
children come with their parents.
Right. So the parent brings a child.
And the parent will come into the room as well.
Right, right. Okay. So that interview, that first interview, is that the parent answering a lot of those questions?
It'll be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I try to talk with the child and get as much as I can from the child. But yeah, the parent will fill gaps, and sometimes I will talk alone with the parent as well to kind of get even more information if they'll want to talk alone as well. Especially for teenagers who can be a little bit more, take a little bit more time to get to know.
Yeah, well, with teenagers, especially vulnerable youth, it's sort of a combination of two things. It's that thing that teenagers have, where they
Right.
just don't want to talk to you. But the other thing too, where you're talking about children who have lived in unstable housing situations where they don't trust you, they flat out trust
Right.
no one.
Exactly.
You know?
That's another space.
And and so that just adds, to make it hard. You know what I find? I learn more about a child by talking to their brothers and sisters,
yeah.
or the other people who live in the
Right.
group home. They'll tell you, they'll tell you the real truth. And so do you see children who have suffered multiple complex trauma? I mean, is that something that?
I generally do not, in my practice
Yeah.
today, I generally do not see children who have suffered multiple complex trauma.
Like the girl in the story.
Like young children.
Yeah.
I have worked with young adults and teenagers and young adults in my clinical experience who have had multiple traumas, and I've worked with adults who have pretty severe PTSD as well.
Yeah, yeah. So that really,
But I work with children in general.
in general, sure. So, but that trauma things, PTSD, things like that, that enhances the physical maladies. Is that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, what I find is that with PTSD, the whole system is kind of going haywire. So we've got all kinds of issues going on. Sometimes they have. What's happening is they're in a state of fight or flight. Most of the time, and so their stress hormones are pumping. They've got issues with insomnia, and then that has a ripple effect. They often have digestive issues, endocrine issues. They'll have, endocrine hormonal imbalance. They'll have ADD, issues with concentration. And a lot of when it happens really young, it has a developmental impact. So they'll have learning issues. They might have, obviously, if they were experiencing malnutrition, then that's going to have an impact as well. All these things.
Yeah. Well, you wonder how a kid is supposed to study if they haven't slept,
Right.
and didn't have breakfast.
Right.
That certainly is a part of it. And then, of course, the deeper thing that their basic core emotional needs are not being met many times. In these
Exactly.
situations, there's no one validating their lives as
Right.
being worthwhile.
Right. So they have anxiety and depression, things like
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about this lately in other circles, and the question that comes up a lot is you see somebody who's like, upper middle class or wealthy in socioeconomic terms, right? And so you'd see someone who's like that, who says to you, "I'm so depressed," and frequently we judge that. We say, "What do you have
What
to
are
be
you-
depressed about? Come on,
Yeah.
You're the guy with the 27-foot boat. I'm not. Why are you depressed?" But it really doesn't have to do with socioeconomics. It has to do with whether a person's core emotional needs, are being met.
Right. And abuse and trauma can happen in any part of society.
Yes,
So-
in any socioeconomic
Right.
group. That's right. And certainly addiction can as well. Do you treat like opioid addiction?
Well, yes. So
Wow.
acupuncture, there's a protocol called the NADA protocol, and it has been used for drug and alcohol withdrawal. It's really an important thing to nowadays with the opioid epidemic. So these are mainly ear auricular points.
Whoa.
So they have a powerful impact because they're right next to the brain.
So do you see a collaborative effort with acupuncture and psychology?
Yes, and I've worked with a couple of different psychologists and or therapists and psychiatrists.
Okay. So I'm going to call my managed care organization tomorrow. It seems to me like I'm going to need a whole team, of people to get me through the next thing. So tell me about some real people. We have just a few minutes left, and I want you to reveal things about patients, but not their names.
Okay. Yes, of course. So I guess I can tell you kind of sort of like case study about a few different people I've worked with. I worked with a young woman who had been sexually and physically abused as a 3-year-old, and she was coming in for pelvic pain, frequent urinary tract infections. She had a history of risky behavior. She was extremely emotional, had rage issues, but her main complaint was these frequent UTIs and the pelvic pain, and yeah.
We get that a lot, sexual abuse in the early stages of life. Was it the father or the boyfriend?
I think it was actually an uncle.
Oy.
Yeah, so it's like, just someone on the scene that was around.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Susan and Scott are out there. A whole lot of people are writing in tonight. Thank you all. I love you all for listening to the show. I hope you're enjoying the time I'm spending here with Kristen Gray Apple. I know I am. Tell us another case story.
Another that comes to mind was a young, these are teenagers and slightly old. This one was more like 18. He had, his parents weren't around. He had intimacy issues, difficulty breathing, came in for sexual dysfunction. He was struggling with alcohol abuse. He had anxiety, and he also had issues with hygiene. So these were some of the areas we were trying to help him with. And he was a very large, tall individual, but I don't think he recognized his size. He was really a tall person.
Are you governed by HIPAA regulations?
Yes.
You are. So you got to be careful.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, 3 quick things I want to do because we're almost running out of time here. I wanted to tell everyone at home about the Louisiana Department of Child and Family Services, the 3 main initiatives. This is from the earlier story in the show. 3 main initiatives that they are trying to implement. This comes from the Assistant Secretary for Child Welfare. Her name is Renda Hodnett. Trying to change the resources for older youth. When foster kids turn 18, they are no longer eligible to be in the state's foster care system. And lots of times those teens just don't know where they're going to go to bed that first night of being 18 years old. So first, Hodnett said the department is working to make sure that no child ages out of foster care without a permanent connection. She said that will not always end up in adoption, but the department wants to make sure the teen has at least one former foster parent they know they can turn to for support. That really doesn't cost anything, and it's tremendous. And it's essentially what we provide at Age Out Angels. So hats off to Louisiana for making that gesture. Second thing that they're doing is they're starting a brand new initiative in the state called Open Table to get the community involved in helping those teens. Open Table is a faith-based initiative, and it recruits members of a congregation to come together around a table and actually commit to a year-long support of a young person who will be aging out of foster care within the next year. I don't think that's a very big deal. 1 year is just not enough. They need way more than that. So what happens after the year? They get, possibly abandoned. The third big push of the department is about attracting the best people to the department. Hodnett said it's a difficult job, but an important one. So of those 3 initiatives, 2 are what I've begun to refer to as theater. They're all show and no substance. And 1, to make sure that a person has a permanent connection. That's pretty serious stuff. Also, another story, this is unrelated to that, from the Kids Count Data Center, which is a project of the Ann E. Casey Foundation. And Casey, I'll tell you over and over again, is indeed the mothership for organizations like Age Out Angels. They found that 22% of children in the United States, that's more than 1 in 5, okay? Then we're talking in raw numbers, 22% is 15.6 million kids have had 2 or more adverse experiences in their lives. 22% of children. Data on adverse childhood experiences vary by race and ethnicity, with American Indians 30%, African American children at 34%, significantly more likely to have multiple adverse experiences than their white and Asian counterparts, white children at 19% and Asian children at 7%. The term adverse childhood experiences, and I want to say hi to Susan, who's out there listening. The term adverse childhood experiences refers to a number of potentially traumatic events, including episodes of sexual, physical, or emotional abuse, as well as exposure to hardships like parental divorce and parental incarceration. Such events can have a negative and lasting effect on a child's well-being and have been linked to increased risks of obesity, alcoholism, and depression, according to research. At the state level, children living in the South and Southwest are generally more likely to have multiple adverse experiences when compared to their peers in other parts of the country. The rate is highest in Arizona, where 31% of kids have 2 or more adverse experiences. At the other end of the spectrum sits New York and Maryland, where 15% of the kids fit this statistic. It's funny how you can get yourself so used to problems, and I see Dana's out there listening. Hi, Dana. You can get so used to problems like, you know, the gunshots in high crime neighborhoods, that these things become normal, and so somehow 15% of kids having multiple traumatic experiences didn't sound so bad, because the other second I told you 31% in a different place. But there shouldn't be any. There should be no kids who have multiple traumatic experiences. I mean, it's just insane that we've come to accept a certain amount of that. And I do have one more thing, and I want to tell you about a fabulous piece of news. I'm going to end this on a really high note tonight. But before I do that, Kristen, where can people find you?
My practice is in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. My website is www.applepuncture.com. So it's ApplePuncture.com.
Okay. And so those of you across the country will want to get your plane tickets as quickly as possible and fly here to Lawrenceville and visit with Kristen Gray Apple. So this is our last live show until March 29th. The next 3 are going to be the pre-recorded shows. And I can tell you right now that they are absolutely fascinating. And the deal is, I want to watch them with you for the next 3 weeks. So I'll be in a remote location. You'll be in your homes. We'll all be watching the show together, and then we can communicate either on Facebook or through email and talk about what we're talking about on the show. It's going to be a grand experiment. It's going to last 3 weeks, and I want you to share it with me. And here's a piece of wonderful news to go away on. And this comes to us, I'm sorry to say, not from the United States, but from British Columbia. Young adults who have been in British Columbia foster care will get more money for rent, child care, and health care, the BC government announced Sunday. The province is investing $7.7 million this year in a program which funds young adults who have been in foster care and are going back to school, attending a rehabilitation, vocational, or life skills program. Isn't that wonderful? $7.7 million, and it's just for that province. It's not for like the all of Canada. Parents recognize that with today's cost of living, young adults need time to figure out their path and steady support to get where they want to go. Children and Family Development Minister Katrine Conroy said in a statement. That's especially true for children and youth in government care, and it's why we're increasing financial support, making our programs more flexible, and keeping the door open longer to help them access the right supports when they are ready. So starting April 1st, the program will raise the upper age limit by 1 year to, are you ready for this? 27. 27. Do we have a call coming in? I'm looking at the board. We'll take the call. We have 1 minute. Hi, caller. Who's this?
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Claire. I was just wondering if for the doctor or the acupuncturist, if she's had any experience at all with special needs children or special needs people, and if there's any relevance to the acupuncture
Great
field
question,
with
Claire.
special
Yeah.
needs.
That is a great question. I've worked with autistic children. that's the extent of what I've done. But yes, acupuncturists do work with special needs children. Do you have any particular question about that?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what in particular is the ailment or malady or part of the malady of autism or a child with special needs that you're actually seeing can be correlated to the acupuncture? In other words, what malady do they present that acupuncture has actually
helped with,
been of service to them? Right.
Generally, it relates to the nervous system, so helping them calm down from the overstimulation of the environment, and just, overstimulation in general, and sometimes environmental sensitivities and allergies. So we're helping them to sort of calm the nervous system and regulate the immune response as well.
And Claire, when you say autism, Claire, I mean the spectrum is so wide.
Right.
Could you be a little more specific, like how functional?
Well, say for instance, in many of autistic children, they have that rocking.
Right.
And I know for me, my daughter in particular, who is autistic, the rocking really seems to increase in the sporadic of the joining of the hands back and forth.
Right.
When she gets excited. Mm-hmm. Do you see acupuncture decreasing that behavior? And if so, or any behavior, but if so in that particular, do you find, is there a repeated need for the acupuncture? Is it once a week? Is it twice a week? Is it once a month?
In 10 seconds.
Okay. So that behavior of the rocking is self-soothing, and so we actually don't try to get rid of that behavior, but we try to calm the nervous system, and you might see it happening less frequently. We do recommend weekly treatments for at least 10 treatments weekly consistently. Yeah.
Claire, thanks a lot for your phone call. I'm sorry we're out of time.
Thank you so much. That's okay. You have a good night now.
God bless you. Call in anytime, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. So anyway, starting out on April 1st, the children in British Columbia will increase to the age of 27. Monthly support will increase by $250 to a maximum of $1,250. Young adults will get year-round support instead of the previous 8-month limit. How wonderful they are in British Columbia. I'm not suggesting we move there. I'm suggesting that we take a page from their book and maybe do something nice for children. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another hour talking about youth who should matter more in our political and economic discourse than they do now. And solutions. In this case, a very interesting solution, and one that I'm sure everyone out there hadn't thought of, with my guest, Kristen Gray Apple, acupuncturist in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. I want to thank everyone so much. We have multiple Susans listening in tonight. A lot of people said hi to me on Facebook, and I'm so grateful that you've tuned into the show. So join me next Thursday at 8 p.m., pre-recorded shows. March 8th, Zoe Brooks of the Trenton Circus Squad. March 15th, Mark Wilcox of Covenant House. March 22nd, a whole hour explaining the opioid epidemic and how we need to get $12 billion from the Sackler family. That's going to be a fun one. So until next week, let's make this week the best week ever. Good night.